Are you at a point in your healing process where you feel stuck and confused and you're wondering what to do next? Are you at a place where you're like, okay, I see what's going on with me now. You're aware of what's happening. You're aware of some of the patterns that you've been having. You're aware of the thoughts that keep coming up, and you're aware of the behaviors that you have. And you're willing to do something about it. You're not avoiding it anymore. You're not making excuses anymore. But even though you're aware and you're willing, you don't know what to do next. You don't know what to do with the things that's coming up. You don't know what you're supposed to do with what you're seeing. You don't know what to do with what you're experiencing. And that's what we're going to talk about today in this episode. We're going to talk about how to identify the next step in the process after awareness and after willingness. But before we do that, let me introduce myself. Hi. I'm your host here at a Sister Love Podcast, and I am just one woman with one voice trying to help other women heal one story at a time. And if you're a woman who is in the beginning stages of their healing journey and don't know where to start and is searching for resources, support, and education, then you are in the right place. I would love for you to become part of the sisterhood. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and never miss another episode of the Sister Love Podcast. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Sister Let's Heal Together, where we keep the conversation going, share our stories, and support each other along the way. So if you listen to episode 1, and if you didn't, you can always go back to listen to it. I shared one of my PTSD stories. I shared one of my experiences, and I talked about how as a young child I experienced SA, and because of that, it really changed how I perceived the world. The way that I experienced life, the way that I talked, the way that I behaved, the way that I responded to people. And most of the episode was about how I showed up in my parenting. I talked about how, because of what I went through, I became super overprotective with my kids, like overly protective. I didn't trust people. I didn't trust situations. I didn't trust my own judgment. So when people were around my kids, my mind would go crazy. I would start making stories up. I would start assuming the worst. And because of that, I became controlling. My kids weren't allowed to go anywhere, okay, without me. They weren't allowed to be alone with people. They had to stay together. I needed to know every thing. For a long time, I convinced myself, girl, that's normal. All parents do that. I'm just being a good mom. I'm just protecting my kids. But after years of living like that, honestly, about 13 years, I finally had to realize that that wasn't right. The way I was parenting wasn't healthy. The way I was reacting wasn't normal. And the way fear was controlling my decision wasn't actually helping me. It was actually harming my children. And that was the hard realization, because once you see that, you can't unsee it. And that's where I became aware. I became aware of what I was doing. I became aware of how my trauma was still showing up. And I became aware of how I was affecting my children in my relationships. And once I became aware, I became willing, right? Willing to change, willing to look at myself, willing to admit that something needs to be different and something needs to change. But what I didn't talk about in episode 1 was what happened after I became willing, because that's where a lot of people get stuck. And that's where I got stuck too. So once I became willing, I really thought that was it, right? I really thought that I was able to move straight into action. In my head, the process was simple. Like, okay, I see what's going on. I'm aware now. I'm willing to fix it. So now I'll just fix it, right? Boom, bam, bam, done, right? That's honestly what I thought. And that's not what happened. What actually happened was everything started to come up. And I mean, everything. I start second guessing myself. I second guess my thoughts. I second guess my reaction. I second guess what I thought the solution was. And I remember thinking, this felt worse than before, right? Being stuck here between seeing it and fixing it felt worse than when I wasn't aware of it at all. Because now you can't fucking unsee it, right? You can't unsee your patterns. You can't unsee how you show up. You can't unsee the way that you might be causing harm to the people that you love and you don't even mean it. And you won't be able to see this and know what to do with it. This is fucking painful, right? Flashbacks. I was stuck in this place for so long and I kept asking myself the same question over and over again. Rose, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why aren't you moving? Why aren't you changing these things? Why do you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over? And you know it's not giving you the results that you want. And I was getting frustrated with myself, as you can see. Because in my mind, awareness and willingness was supposed to equal change. But instead, I felt paralyzed. All up in my body, literally paralyzed. I was like, I didn't understand why. It took me a long time. I was journaling a lot, having conversations with myself, and I realized something was missing. And what actually brought me all this together was my daughter, right? I found her journal. Yes, I was being nosy. I was still in my stuff, and she was writing everything in her journal, her thoughts, her feelings, things that she didn't want to say out loud. And it hit me when she was writing, the fact that she feels safe enough to put it in her book, in her journal, and not safe enough to talk it to me. She was aware of what she was feeling. She knew something wasn't right, but she didn't know she didn't know what to do with it. So she released it in the only place that she felt safe enough to do that. And that was her journal. And that's when it clicked. That's exactly what I was doing. I felt safe enough to see it, safe enough to name it, safe enough to admit it, right? But I didn't feel safe enough to act on it because I didn't trust myself. So I didn't trust my judgment. I didn't trust that I could handle it if it went wrong. I didn't trust myself to know what the right move was. So I didn't move. And that stuck and confusing feeling showed up for me. And what I did realize, I don't remember exactly what gave me that light bulb moment, but girl, let me tell you, my survival instincts kicking in. I don't remember what it was. It could have been a book because let me tell you, I read a lot of books. I'm always reading. I'm always watching videos. I'm always trying to understand something. So it could have been a book or something that gave me that oh shit moment. I can't quite remember what it was when it happened. And honestly, because of all the trauma that I experienced, I have a lot of memory loss. There's a lot of things that I don't remember. So forgive me for this. But back on topic, the realization was simple, girl. Your survival instincts are kicking in, and that's why you're stuck. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but when you don't feel safe, your survival instincts turn on automatically. And those instincts usually show up in three ways. We fight, we freeze, or we run. Fight looks like defensiveness. We're going hard, we're yelling, we're screaming. Sometimes we're trying to control the situation. Freeze look like stopping, not moving, trying to make yourself invisible like a deer in headlights. If you stay still, maybe they won't see you. And then it's run. Catch me if you can. And I noticed my freeze was on. Like I said earlier, I was going to tell you this, but one of mine that show up the most is freeze. I freeze. When I freeze, I research. I look up things. Let me read more. Let me show up more. Let me do all this stuff so I can understand what is going on. Then I research and I research again. Then I research and I get stuck right there. I hyperfixate about a situation. I tell myself, I don't know enough yet. I can't move yet. I'm stuck here because I don't know enough. I convince myself that I have to know everything about the situation before I can do anything about it. And that became my freeze. And what's crazy is I realized this while I was in it. I was literally in the middle of hyperfixating when I came across information about freezing and survival response. And I was like, okay, this is me. This is what's going on with me right now. I'm frozen in motion. So once I realized my freeze was on, once I realized that's what was happening, things started to make more sense to me because my body was reacting. When I didn't feel safe, my body showed up every time. Every time I thought about actually doing something different, I could feel it in my body. I tightened up. My thoughts would start racing. I'll start questioning everything. What if I'm wrong? What if I make it worse? What if I can't handle what comes up, right? So I stayed right here. And at first, I didn't realize it was what it was. I just knew I was aware. I knew I was willing, and I knew I wasn't moving. But when I start paying attention to myself, I noticed the patterns. I notice how I go inward. I notice how I isolate. I know how I start trying to figure everything out in my goddamn head. I notice how I won't move. Like I understand everything. And that's when it clicked for me. This wasn't confusion. This was my body telling me I didn't feel safe yet. And once I saw that, I had to stop trying to push myself past it, because pushing myself wasn't working. My body wasn't asking me to do something different yet. It was asking me to feel safe first. And once I understand that, the question stopped being what's wrong with me, and it became, what do I do right now to feel safe enough to take the next step? All right, let's pause. Before we go any further, I need to stop right here for a second, because yes, we talked about awareness. Yes, we talked about willingness. And now you know what comes next, which is safety. But before I can tell you how to create safety, which I will 100% go into a deep dive in episode 6, I need to talk about what happened to me while I was trying to create safety for myself. Because with anything in life, there will always be challenges. There will always be roadblocks. There will always be things that come up that you have to navigate to get to where you're trying to go. Every road is not perfect, not always straight. There will be ups, there will be downs, there will be detours, there will be closures. There will always be something, right? So when I say safety, I know some of you are probably like, okay, I got it. Now what's next? Let's go do it. And I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to hear this and think, all right, that's it. I'm good. I'm out. Because I promise you there are things is going to come up in this process that you don't know how to navigate yet. And this isn't a point A to point E situation. It's a point A to point 8, point 1, 8.2, 8.3, and all the way until you get to B. And those little points in between, they really matter. Those are the moments where people get stuck. Those are the moments where people get frustrated. Those are the moments where people give up. So I want to talk about the challenges I ran into from point A to point B. So when you run into them, you don't get caught off guard. I want to talk about the 3 biggest challenges that came up for me. So let's talk about the challenges, right? Let's talk about the 3 biggest challenges that I faced in the process of creating safety for myself. The biggest one is regulating my nervous system. Mine was fucked up like hella. I didn't know that back then. I just knew I couldn't come the fuck down. I just knew I was always like ready to fight. Like I was on one. I was always defensive. I was going inward. I had 2 main instincts that I used to use, fight and freeze, right? And I kept going back and forth between them 2. Either I was yelling, snapping, arguing, trying to control some shit, or I was inverted inside of me, isolated, avoiding people, pulling back, or disappearing. You just see me one moment, next minute I'm gone. I don't know if you know this, but if your nervous system isn't regulated, your survival instincts do not turn off. They stay on. Always alert, always watching, always ready to protect yourself, right? So for me, regulating my nervous system meant turning off survival mode. I don't know if I said that right perfectly. I don't know. Please do not quote me. Please do not quote me. I'm not a doctor. I just read books and I'm just speaking from my own experience. So don't be like, oh, Rose said that. Nah, man. I ain't say that. All right. On to number 2. The second one was guilt. Guilt was everywhere. I felt survival guilt. I felt guilt for surviving something that other people didn't and that are still stuck in. I felt guilt. I didn't know how to help everybody. I felt guilt around things that I did, the things I didn't do, the things I said, the things I didn't say, right? I feel guilt about disappointing people. About losing access to people, about choosing myself, right? I felt guilty about what I did to myself. I felt guilty about what I didn't do for myself, right? It was all like guilt. Everywhere. Like, how dare you, Rose? How fucking dare you move forward? How fucking dare you change, right? That guilt was heavy on my ass. And it was like one of the hardest things to work through. Like, it was like, bitch, was trying to take me out. And then the third, my identity. This one scared me the most because who the fuck is Rose Jones outside of trauma, right? Literally, really, who am I? If I'm not the survivor, right? The girl who survived domestic violence, the single mom, the girl that survived SA, the girl that is here. Who am I without this trauma? Who do I become if I'm not operating in survival anymore? Who gives me permission to be something else? The question alone will stop you and make you think. And that was the real challenge for me. I had to sit with myself and like, who is Rose Jones, right? You wanna know who I am? I'm that bad bitch, and I'm swinging. Let me stop. But I am here. Lee. Yeah, my name is Rose Jones. Yeah, and I'm discovering me. I'm a bad itch, and I'm healing. All right. Back to schedule programming. So those are the 3 challenges that I faced when I was trying to create safety. But instead of doing a deep dive into these 3 challenges right now, because this episode is already going to be long enough, I decided to break it into 3 episodes. Episode 3, 4, and 5. Episode 3 is the very next episode, right? And that episode is going to talk about the nervous system, what it actually looks like when you're dysregulated, how that shows up in your real life, and what I personally did to start regulating mine so that I could stop living in survival mode all the time. Then episode 4, we're going to talk about guilt, the survival guilt, the guilt around choosing myself, and the guilt around disappointing people, and how I work through that without tearing myself apart, right? And in episode 5, we're going to talk about identity. Who are you outside of the trauma and survival mode? What your future looks like and why that feeling of lost identity happens. And in these 3 episodes is going to come from 3 angles. We're going to talk about what the challenge is, the details on how it relates to your trauma and how it shows up in your role and how it shows up in mine. And I'm going to talk about my experience with each of those challenges, what I learned, what I had to adapt to, and what actually helped me move forward and move through it. And I'm also going to talk about the things that you can actually do when these challenges show up for you. Okay, now before we wrap up this episode, I just want to say this again. I know it might feel the urge to skip straight to episode 6 because that's where I get into how we create safety. But I promise you, if you stay with me, the process, you won't regret it. There will be roadblocks, and I really want to prepare you for those first, okay? And I know some of you are still going to go and skip to episode 6. And then you're going to be right back here like, oh, she told me so. So maybe just stay here and go in order and trust me on this one. Now, I really do want to say something. Thank you again. Thank you so much for being here with me. I know time is valuable, and one thing that you can't get back is time, and it's not refundable. So for you to choose to spend your time here with me again, that really means a lot to me. And I truly, truly hope that this time you spent here listening to this podcast today was worth it. And if you want to continue this conversation or have more conversations like this, we have a support group for this podcast, and it's called Sister Let's Heal Together. And it's on Facebook, and I would love for you to be part of that. Sister, all you have to do is get the information in the show notes. And that's it. Until next episode, signing out, your sister to love, Rose. Bye.